Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the July 28th, 2020 meeting of the Town Council Charter Review Committee. In accordance with Massachusetts general laws, this meeting is being videotaped and audio recorded, as well as being remotely broadcasted via a Zoom webinar. If there is anyone in our viewing audience who is taping this meeting, would you please announce yourself? Hearing and seeing no one, our first order of business is who is going to take minutes today?
I'll do it.
Thank you, Jeff.
Oh, Jeff. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you, Jeff.
Here's Ralph.
And there's Ralph.
There he is.
Ralph, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Okay, the first item on the agenda, we have the meeting minutes of July 21st, 2020. Has everyone had a chance to read them?
Yes.
And do I hear a motion?
Motion to accept?
Second.
Seconded by Phil. Any discussion?
Seconded by Jeff.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Seconded by me.
Oh, I'm sorry. Seconded by Jeff. I have two revisions. Midway through the page, when it refers to Article 2, Section 3, it should also say paragraph 4. And then the wording in parentheses before as requested should be the word or, O-R. And then the second sentence in those minutes, under that particular section and paragraph, do you think it's wise to tell the two sentences? So I have them written down. Tell me if they should appear in the minutes.
I think they should.
Okay, so the two sentences that were created out of the last sentence in that section, the first should begin, all council proceedings. I'm sorry, after all council proceedings, there should be a period. And then the next sentence would begin, the town clerk shall perform. And then at the end would be that quoted language up above. One more revision, not to pick on you, Bill.
All right.
Under article, the next article you refer to, I believe it should be Article 2, Section 4, Paragraph 5. So with those changes, do I hear a motion to accept the minutes with those revisions?
So moved.
Say it again.
Motion made.
Who made the motion?
I did. Oh.
Bill? Bill made the motion.
I'll second it.
And Andy seconds. All right. All those in favor, Phil Adams,
Yes.
Larry Levine, yes. Bill Fonseca,
Yes.
Jeff Bosworth,
Yes.
Tom Christensen,
Yes.
Andy Frazier,
Yes.
Ralph Page.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. We had left off at our last meeting under Article 2, Section 4, I'm sorry, Section 5, the third paragraph. And we had spoke about the ability of the town council to appoint representatives and delegates to town boards, etc. And we felt that there was discussion that was contradiction to the president's authority under section 3, third paragraph. There was also a discussion about that if we deleted and allowed, Mr. President, can you hear us, Mr. President?
Just coming online right now, is finishing up some town business, and happy to,
Okay. Okay, welcome. Thank you. We can hear you loud and clear.
thank you.
So why don't we rekindle the discussion? How do you feel about the discrepancy in this paragraph versus the president's powers? And should we revise the wording to have the town council president be the one who appoints? That's one question. And the other one is, there was discussion about whether a decision of the town council president to appoint people to committees could be overridden by a supermajority vote of the town council. So the floor is yours, people.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Ralph.
I've been thinking about this, and going back through my notes and all, it would be my thought that the president of the council appoint all sitting committees, standing committees, and that if an ad hoc committee is needed, then it should be a vote of the council. The reason I've been thinking about this is usually an item will come up at a council meeting, and we'll talk about whether or not we need a committee, 3 members or 4 members to look at it. And if that's the case, then we should vote right there at the council meeting to create it. And usually an ad hoc committee will be, 3 members of the council. I think it's easier that way, and any standing committees should be the president appointing them.
Is there a list of what standing committees are?
There is a list. I don't have it in front of me.
I bet you
And-
Jeannie has, and I know she's on vacation, but I bet you she could grab that.
Okay. And when you speak of ad hoc committees, you would appoint people other than, potentially other than those of the town councils, correct?
I would think there's a possibility that we could include citizens. Typically, I would think an ad hoc committee would be one to look at language in something, or something that just pops up that, hey, let's look further into this.
Marilyn?
This is, the Charter Review Committee is an ad hoc committee because we have a defined mission as far as I see it, and it's made up of counselors and residents. These standing committees are also made up many times of counselors and residents. So I don't see, other than the length of the mission, I don't see the difference in making one a council responsibility and one a president responsibility. I think it works right now with it all being under the jurisdiction of the president, and I'd like to leave it that way. And I don't get a vote, so I just have a voice.
Ralph, you wouldn't consider the Charter Review Committee a standing committee because it's established by the charter itself? And it says when it...
I would consider it a standing committee because not only is it set out in the charter, but it's also set out in our bylaw that we have to have one. And that this committee is to meet every, year ending in a 0 or a 5 or whatever. So it's set out specifically that at this point in time, this committee will be formed. It may be different members every 10 years or whatever, but It's still a standing committee that we are always going to be looking at this.
Anyone else?
I agree with Ralph when he's talking about ad hoc committees, because we've done the same thing in the past, where if there's a specific issue that comes up, 3 of us may get voted in to review it and come back with a report. So I can understand what he's saying, and it might not be a bad idea to see how it works out.
Tom?
Larry,
I'm sorry. Tom,
Go ahead, Phil.
go ahead, Tom.
Okay. So there's a couple things there, right? So the council has the power to appoint the town manager, which is a vote of the whole council, right? And then the rest of it is going to be if Marilyn, like Marilyn said, that would be the president of the council. So there's a couple things going on there, right? You have to
Sure.
leave the part about the town manager to the whole council.
Correct.
Yes, I don't think there was a dispute on that,
Okay.
on that portion. Yes, Phil?
But go ahead.
Okay, I'm sorry. Go, Tom.
No, I'm just saying, as far as revising that paragraph,
Uh-huh.
something's got to stay and something's got to go.
Not necessarily.
Not- I
You
mean,
can
not
leave everything
necessarily.
the way it is if you
Right.
wanted.
Correct. Yes.
Phil?
yeah, I just want to bring up again the conversation we had before in which the president does it in himself. I think that we should have the vice president along with the president on these committees. And one of the issues that Ralph brought up was the fact that if they didn't agree, and I suggested then we'd have a council vote, and that would take care of that issue if in fact it happened. But I'm just concerned that we're leaving one person to make these committee assignments, and I think that we should have 2 people in the mix since the vice president works very closely with the president. So that, I just want to bring that up again because that's one of the topics we discussed about before.
Ralph, as it stands now, when there's an ad hoc committee to be formed, who decides now who will be on that committee?
Good question. That would probably be one for the president.
Okay. Let me throw my 2 cents in. If it ain't broken, don't fix it. We've had experience now, how long? 5 years,
4,
right, Ralph?
who's counting?
Yeah, I think
And,
4 or 5 years. I think we're going into the 5th.
right. I'm just saying, we don't have any evidence of any problems with this issue.
That's true.
And if a president started appointing people that had disfavor with the rest of the council has authority under a supermajority to remove a president. That's my 2 cents. Can you all hear me? I just got a message. I'm unstable.
Yeah. No, you're coming in loud and clear.
Okay, Phil?
Yeah, I just think that one person can have a monopoly on deciding who's on what committees and how. And I just think 2 is better than 1. That's my only feeling, and that's why I brought it up.
All right. Any other comments? Yes, Jeff, was that you?
Yeah, the way this paragraph reads, it says the council shall have the power. But the way we're discussing it, it's like you're breaking it into 2 where the president will do the other appointings.
Right. We see that there's a discrepancy between this paragraph on appointment of committee members and a prior paragraph where the president has the power to appoint. And so one has to give because it probably hasn't come up as an issue, but some lawyer could bring it up. So, having heard all the discussion, is there, with looking at that particular paragraph where the council shall have the power, do I hear any motion or motions to change the language within that paragraph? Yes, Phil? Was that you?
No, I'm,
All right.
So
See, yes, Ralph?
through the chair, I don't think that paragraph should be changed. I think we should look at going back to Article 2, Section 3, Paragraph 3, where it talks about the president.
Mhm.
And under the third line, it says, the president shall appoint all members of committees of the council. I would look to change that line to say, the president shall appoint all members of standing committees of the council.
Well, at this moment, we don't know what standing committees are. So with
I can give you a list of them.
everyone's indulgence, we can wait and ask Jeannie on her return to give us a list of what standing committees are, so we can make a rational decision on that. Yes, Michael.
I would just quote from past experience. I'll give you a situation of a standing committee, and it's the only standing committee that I can recall right now was probably the town manager search committee. All other committees are constantly in place, whether it's liquor commission, they're all being revisited on a daily basis. So I don't know if anyone else can identify any other committees besides the town manager search committee that would be outside the realm of what we're discussing.
Well, our committee is a standing committee, I presume. This charter review committee is a standing committee. There's also in the charter a bylaw committee review committee. I would think that would be a standing committee. There must be more. Maybe you've established standing committees by your rules and regulations.
I guess what I was trying to say is, if it didn't come out right, is that 99% of all our committees are standing committees.
Exactly.
The town manager search committee would be viewed as an ad hoc committee, and I don't remember any other committees that were just put in place temporarily and then dissolved.
And Ralph, you think Jeannie may have a list of those?
Absolutely.
There's definitely a list, because each year when a new president is in, we go back through the whole list, and the president is able to appoint the members again.
Okay. So with everyone's agreement, I'd like to postpone further discussion on this particular paragraph till we at least know what's our standing committees, so you can make a decision if there is such a motion with a educated perspective. Yes, Tom.
Larry, just to clarify, the town manager search committee, how was that established? Was that the president, or was that the whole council voted on that?
Through the chair, I can answer that if you want a quick answer. So
Go ahead.
President.
the president, the standing president at that point in time selected the members for that committee jointly on her own opinion, if you will.
Thank you.
I see you, Marilyn.
No, but Larry doesn't.
That's okay. Larry's got his head turned.
Yeah, Larry's not looking.
No, I'm looking under the town manager article. It really doesn't specifically state that the council appoints a.
you're away from the mic again, Larry.
All right, sorry, Phil. The article doesn't specifically say what the procedure, other than the council shall appoint the town manager. So that would be, I presume, considered an ad hoc committee. Go ahead, Marilyn.
Thank you. At the time, and Michael is right, the president made the appointment, but there was a public service announcement inviting people to submit a letter of interest regarding serving on this committee. And it was done very methodically, and it wasn't done politically. It was done properly, in my opinion, but the choice was from the president. However, she also announced to the council who the selected participants would be. And so it was done with full disclosure of the council's knowledge.
Yeah, the only thing I would add to that, because I was on it, was that Marilyn is right. They did solicit applications and letter of intent, and the group was formulated from those people that put in a letter of intent and an application.
Okay. Go ahead, Tom.
No, I just, that sort of goes to the language of the thing. If the president selected that ad hoc committee, the council did not appoint that ad hoc committee. That's, I know we're going to table this and get the list, and that's fine.
And we have different suggestions. We have a suggestion of president and vice president. Then we have a suggestion that some type of committees would need town council appointment approval. And so we have varying opinions. So once we have the standing committee, we'll have a better handle on that. But please think about this in the week ahead. Okay. Can we move to the next one? I'll just put the text table. The next paragraph reads, "The council shall be the licensing authority of the town and shall, as authorized by the general laws, have all the power to issue licenses, to make all necessary rules and regulations regarding issuance of such licenses, to attach conditions and restrictions to such licenses as it deems to be in the public interest, and to enforce all laws relating to such licensed businesses." Discussion. People from the council, you have a subcommittee now looking at that particular issue? Yes, see, yes.
That's what I've heard.
Okay, and do you know how close they are to making recommendations?
No clue.
Okay. Okay. Can we ask one of the council members to let us know if, because this potentially could have some impact on our decision on this? I mean, this sort of mirrors what state law says in a general sense. So, go ahead, Marilyn.
Dr. Larry, I know, I'm not on the licensing committee, but I know that they are researching the issue of inactive licenses. And I don't know that
Oh, yes, yes.
I don't know that that particular decision, one way or another, would impact on
Correct.
their authority within this scope. I think that the licensing committee still should be able to place a restriction and make that recommendation to the council on a particular license. But in terms of inactive licenses, I don't think it matters what we do here. I think that's the main issue that's before them right now.
Okay. All right. Well, seeing no other comments, do I presume that we have no comments or no revisions for this paragraph? Seeing and hearing none, that's what I'm on.
Can't hear you.
Lost you here.
I know. I can't write on the keyboard. I'm sorry. All right. Next paragraph, the councils shall conduct an annual review of the town manager's job performance, a summary of which shall be available to the public. Comments, questions? Seeing and hearing none, we'll put down no comment. Now we move to section 6, town bylaws. Proposed bylaws shall address one subject only and shall be introduced in writing and in the form necessary for final adoption. Any proposed bylaw shall be published in a local publication or newspaper, provided, however, that whenever a proposed bylaw or other measure would exceed in length more than 10 column inches of ordinary newspaper notice print, then in lieu of publication in a local publication or newspaper of the entire length of the proposed bylaw, a reasonable synopsis may be published. The proposed bylaw shall also be available in the office of the town clerk or the town's bulletin board and on the town's website or other official online repository of municipal information, whether on the internet or accessed through another comparable technology, not less than 7 days prior to its second reading, except for emergency bylaws. Ralph?
Yes.
Yes.
There's so many things to talk about. So what we've had problems with is bylaws being introduced to the council in the correct form and necessary for final adoption. We've had multiple ones come from the planning board that came in such a form that our town clerk didn't even realize that they were a bylaw change. And I don't know how to address that, how to make it clearer that you have to be able to take what's been created and insert it directly into the bylaw the way it's supposed to be. I'm at a loss because to me this sounds very simple, straightforward, and easy. And I think Marilyn will attest to the fact that we've done a lot of rewriting on them. We just had one submitted for the solar moratorium that Jeannie thought it was basically notes from the planning board instead of a bylaw. How do we fix it, Larry?
Well, there are a few ways, I guess, that, and I don't like spending town's money, but you could ask town council, SEL, the town's attorney, to prepare a prototype of how a notification of a bylaw amendment can be submitted by either a citizen or another town department. Other than that, I know in the past, I'll use the town meeting warrant articles, the town's lawyer would be the one reviewing, technically what it said and suggesting revisions. But other than that, I don't know, or spending more money, have the bylaw reviewed by the town's lawyer, which that's cumbersome and expensive. Yes, Marilyn.
Ralph is correct, because when these bylaws came through, we can't even say we reject them because we didn't recognize them to reject them. So my concern as we've been going through, for example, the mixed use development, which was a compilation of cut and paste from other communities, different sections, different formats, different numbering. And Ralph and I honestly have spent hours working on the document between our computers trying to straighten it out. And if it had gone to legal from at the planning board side of it, rather than wait to the council side to go to legal, because Larry, if you remember, when we did bylaws before town meeting, they were always reviewed at the last minute, the 11th hour before town meeting by town council, SEL. And now it's like they haven't, the bylaws just before council now, and it's been through months and months and months of revision, which were quite honestly unnecessary. So if it were done at the planning board level, where it was required that any bylaw from the planning department, any zoning bylaw change would have legal review before it came to the council, maybe that would perhaps, you know, stop something that was not written in proper format. That's my thought.
That might be a good idea, because if you had the town's lawyer look at it beforehand, not only are you looking at the substance of it, that it's in proper form, but perhaps an opinion whether it be enforceable.
Good point.
So, and how many do you have in a given year? Ballpark?
We have one that's lasted 2 years. So I don't know, a couple a year, Ralph? I don't know how many bylaw changes we're getting.
2, 3. Like I said, it all depends on the year. A couple times we've had 4, but I would say 2 or 3 at the most usually is what we get. Most of them are coming through the planning department, I would say, rather than through the citizens.
Well, even in the past, the planning board suggestions were always reviewed by the suggested revisions to bylaws would be reviewed by the town's lawyer. So I don't know
No, not anymore.
why. Why not?
I don't know. Perhaps it's not, I mean, it was a procedure, a policy that we always followed because we're socialized to follow it. We've had changes in staffing, new director, new thoughts on things. Perhaps it's just an oversight. Maybe if it were written clearly in the bylaw section that before the zoning bylaw, the zoning bylaw is required to have a public hearing before the community, before it comes to the council. And if the planning board, prior to their public hearing or within that process, had town council review the document, at least we would have had one set of eyes looking at the format before it came to us.
I think what I'm sorry, Tom?
I was just going to say, you know, obviously the bylaws are all going through recodification now and stuff. Is that something that, look at Ralph laughing, he was just about to say that, wasn't
Exactly the same thing.
that may be a sounding board too, to see if they have some sort of template that we could use for proposed bylaws.
The other reason I would suggest the town's lawyer look at all these before it gets to town council, as you're well aware, we have had and have right now litigation over perhaps the policies set by the bylaws and different departments. You know, if you have those eyes look at it beforehand and say, you're just asking for litigation and here's why, and if we revise it this way, sure, it'll cost some money in the beginning, but it'll avoid lots of money on the other end. So, but I don't know if that necessitates changing the wording here. Because it says, in the form necessary for final adoption.
And through the chair. I think reading that, what I look at is if you're going to change section 8.070, that you should list section 8.070 and then the new language.
Yep.
If it's removing some language, you're
Yep.
supposed to highlight it, which you'll see later, with red marker, and then put in your new language. And I'm starting to think that some of this probably came about because we kept hearing, well, we don't need to do that because it's going to E-code to be put into a different section anyways. So why bother doing it, except for the fact that it's going to be another year, maybe even a year and a half before we get the recodification. So, maybe this is written correctly and we're just not following it the way we should.
Any other comments? Hearing and seeing none, do I hear a motion on this section, or are we leaving it for the time being? Hearing and seeing none, we'll leave it for the time being. I think we've received letters of suggestions that we'll get to.
Can't hear you, Larry.
Okay, we have received letters on suggestions. I'm guessing that this is one section we will see in those letters.
I've looked through all of that stuff, and I think we will be back to revisit this. So leaving it for now will work.
Okay.
So through the chair, I'm
Sir.
reading the bylaw, the first paragraph, the very last sentence in parentheses, it says amended 6/5/2018 by the voters.
Uh-huh.
I would suggest that any reference to amendments and all be removed from the actual context, because we had talked about doing an addendum at the end, which stated when amendments and all were made and what portion they were made in.
All right, so are you suggesting deleting the wording in parentheses?
Yes,
Is that a motion?
that's a motion.
Motion made by Ralph. Is there a second?
Second.
I'll second.
Second by Bill. Any discussion? Hearing none, seeing none. Phil Adams,
Yes.
Larry Levine, yes. Bill Fonseca.
Yes.
I need a Bill.
Yes.
Good. Jeff Bosworth,
Yes.
Tom Christensen,
Yes.
Andy Fraser,
Yes.
Ralph Page.
Yes.
Okay, it's unanimous. Okay. The next paragraph is any bylaw which amends or repeals a portion of any town bylaw shall set out in full the portion to be so amended or repealed by the use of strikeout type, brackets, or underscoring. Discussion?
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, I think this just repeats the form that if you have a form that the town clerk has available where people can pick up, then you could put that wording in. It'd be easy. Yes, Andy?
Nope,
Oh, just leaning.
that was some background noise.
Okay. So any other comments? Yes, Bill?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Seeing or hearing nothing, then I'll presume we have no comment on this section.
Couldn't hear the end there, Larry.
So, Jeff,
We couldn't, you turned away. We couldn't hear what you finished saying there.
I was cursing someone who was on the other phone.
Oh, okay.
That happens once in a while during the day. The next paragraph reads, prior to final passage Each introduced bylaw shall be read at 2 separate council meetings, except in case of an emergency involving the health or safety of the people or their property. No bylaw shall be declared an emergency unless such emergency is defined and declared in a preamble thereto, separately voted on and receiving the affirmative vote of a supermajority. Comments, questions? Marilyn?
This deals with, obviously, the public hearings that are required before the council. A zoning bylaw change is required to also have a public hearing before the planning board, and that's based on statute. And I'm only planting that seed because in some of the documentation that we heard from other folks, there's some criticism about too many public hearings and too much stuff going on. Unfortunately, there's a requirement that a planning board have a public hearing on a zoning bylaw change before it comes to the council. So I just wanted to add that.
That's by state law.
Correct. Correct.
Mhm. I have a question, and I hate to be anal, but the second line, the health or safety of the people or their property. The use of the word people, am I being too anal? Should it say something like the citizens of the town of East Long Meadow? Tell me if I'm going overboard.
Health and safety of. You can change the people to the citizens or residents, or I don't know, but not all residents. There may be a public safety issue that doesn't involve residents.
Yeah.
You were on the Charter Commission. You wrote these words.
You know, some of it wasn't a big deal then. It's probably still not a big deal. I'm just making a mountain because we don't even define people or citizens or anything. If no one else has a concern, I'll drop my concern.
Yeah, I think people would seem to cover everything. That way you don't get into residents and non-residents
Yeah.
and all that.
Okay. All right, so any other comments or suggestions? Seeing or hearing none, no comments on that section.
Larry, through the chair,
Yes, sir.
I'm reading through and I'm trying to read this whole section on town bylaws. And maybe I'm missing it. In one of the columns, does it say that we need to hold a public hearing? Or do we just need to read this at 2 meetings? I mean, typically we've been holding public hearing. So what we do is do a first reading, and then we usually have a public hearing for the second reading of a bylaw change. I just don't see.
Go ahead. Yes, Marilyn.
I'm curious how the public notice reads for the first and second reading, because they are published. And aren't they usually under public hearings on our agendas?
Well, that's what I'm saying. We tend to hold a public hearing, but I don't see in our charter where it's required to hold a public hearing.
If I may, back when we were going through the Charter Commission and discussing these issues, one of the concerns was notice to the people, just so that they knew that these bylaws were changes were being proposed. The public hearing before the planning board, as we discussed, is required by statute. However, these public meetings are just more for notice so that people have an opportunity, at least that's how I understood it, to weigh in on the proposed changes. The accomplishment is the same. You know, people get to speak, and if there's public notice, But if you want to call it a public hearing, that would be fine too.
But if it's just through the chair,
Yes, sir.
just public notice, then it's up to the president of the council whether they want to allow the public to speak. Where at a public hearing, it's mandated that it be open to the public to speak.
Then we should change it.
I'm not sure if it's somewhere else in the charter. I just couldn't find it in this section, and I just assumed it was there.
What, that it required a public hearing as opposed to a public? I don't know if the general bylaws or state law have a statement to that it would be a public hearing on any amendments to any bylaws. Because that could be allowed, because that would be more specific than the charter. But I don't know the answer to that. Shall we, go ahead, Marilyn.
Is there anything in state statute that I'm not bringing to the surface? I know the planning board hearing is required. You know, then
I don't have an answer regarding general bylaw amendments. I don't know the answer to that. I mean, we can look at it. We can look at our general bylaws about amending it.
Because we replaced the council replaced town meeting, which was where the bylaw was reviewed and potentially adopted, and people were allowed to speak, but town meeting wasn't called a public hearing. We are the legislative body, so I hear what Ralph is saying, but we didn't have a public hearing at town meeting either.
Well, I can research that and look at our general bylaws. I can look at the state laws, whether a public hearing is required. My gut says no. My gut says a public meeting would be required, but not a public hearing, except those things by statute, like a zone change, special permits, and that type of thing. Everyone okay with that, postponing that decision?
Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense.
We have time for one more. I lost track. Did I read the paragraph emergency bylaws?
No,
No, that's next.
That's next.
Next.
That's next, okay. Next paragraph is emergency bylaws shall stand repealed at the expiration of 60 days following their adoption unless an earlier date is specified in the measure, or unless a second emergency measure adopted in conformity with this section is passed extending it, or unless a measure passed in conformity with the procedures for measures generally has been passed extending it. Comments, questions, suggestions? Seeing none, hearing none, no comments. Next paragraph, the affirmative vote of a majority of the full council membership, except as otherwise provided by the general laws or this charter, shall be necessary for the final passage of any bylaw.
So Larry, I think our only question was back to what the full council membership is.
Yep. And we're seeing that more often, and we still have left in limbo that definition in Article 1, Section 7. So I'm going to put down, we're going to revisit this after we come to a definitive answer on what full council means.
And does the word charter need to be capitalized in the last sentence?
I think we have a standing order for all of that stuff.
Yeah.
I think we do too.
Right. And the last, I'm sorry, Marilyn. Marilyn,
Just
can you
quickly,
hear me, Marilyn? Okay.
I know that it says, except as otherwise provided by the general law, excuse me, the general laws, which would cover zoning bylaws require a supermajority to be adopted. Is it important that we write that anywhere? I mean, can we count on future councils looking at this and saying, when we're doing a zoning bylaw, the general laws require, mass general laws require a supermajority, and they'll know to do that, or should we be more specific?
Well, you need the planning board initial recommendation requires a supermajority, 4 out of 5.
No. The recommendation coming from the planning board to the council,
Yep.
from what I understood in my history, was only a majority vote.
Okay. So,
Ralph, you look puzzled.
so when we used to have town meeting, a
Right,
zoning bylaw amendment required a 2/3 vote.
correct. Right.
So that's different than supermajority. Am I correct?
The zoning
With a
bylaw,
with a 7-member board, it's the same.
Oh, okay. Okay.
so
Um,
with a 7-member board, Ralph, it would be 5?
It would be 5.
Okay,
That would, 2/3 would be, 4 point something, which is 5.
so the question is that important, or do we hope that people will know that a zoning bylaw is governed by mass general laws, where I believe a general bylaw, and correct me, is only a majority? Is that correct?
Well, that I don't know.
I'm looking at
I presume a general bylaw is only a majority.
Right,
Yes.
so that's the piece that's important to the planning matter subcommittee.
In a practical sense, if you had a zoning bylaw amendment, would members of the council look at the charter to get direction?
Some would.
Okay, I would think that either town's lawyer would tell them, or that form we spoke about, if it was a form to amend the zoning bylaw, could you say all zoning bylaw amendments require a 2/3 vote on the form? 2/3 affirmative vote?
You could definitely do
I don't
that.
know. If you think it's warranted, then we should put it down.
At town meeting, we always had either town council, SEL, or the moderator say this vote, calls for a 2/3 majority. And someone was always in lockstep with what the requirement was for the vote. And I just don't want, I just like to make sure that it continues that way.
So what about adding
but-
another paragraph which simply says zoning bylaws will require a 2/3 majority vote?
You could, but when it says except as otherwise provided by the general laws, the general law says that.
I'm just saying we're being redundant, but
It's up to you.
for the people that don't go to general laws and read them, like myself.
Okay, right. Well, why don't we all think about that? We have to end now. We have our deadline. And we'll talk about that. I'm writing, Phil. Any other business before we adjourn?
Yes.
Yes, Mr. President.
Through the chair, I don't, a point of information, and I don't know if it was discussed previous, but I would ask your board to consider possibly tightening up the language on where the advertising is to take place. There was a lot of discussion about that in the past and being very costly, or people not finding it maybe in the Springfield newspaper. So maybe that's worth discussing. And the other topic quickly would be, we talked about a president appointing a subcommittee. Has there been any discussion on who appoints the chair of those subcommittees?
Bill?
I thought it was in the charter that
Within the-
we would leave the committee itself to organize, such as chair, vice chair, or secretary.
Okay, I have no voting rights. Obviously, everyone knows I'm here as an ex officio status, but I think that would help control a so-called monopoly by, if the president was to pick the committee members, that let the committee pick the chair of the particular subcommittee that's being chaired.
I recall seeing that somewhere, or a discussion of that, letting committees govern themselves and conduct their own business.
As long as it's on your radar, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
When's
So
the when's the next
Second.
meeting, Larry?
Moved by William Fonseca. What, Phil?
What's the next meeting date?
Oh, yes. Next meeting, same time next Tuesday, which is August, what is it, Marilyn?
I think it's the 4th.
Correct.
Yes?
Yes.
August 4th, 4:30. I will alert Jackie because she has to post it. And the second to adjourn was Andy Frazier. All those in favor, the ayes have it. Thank you very much. Have a good week. I'll see you soon.